Are you lost too, mister? The voice was soft, almost too gentle to be heard over the noise of Terminal 4. Lucien DeMarco lifted his eyes from his phone, where encrypted numbers blinked in sequence. $3 million in digital currency, one tap away from being sealed. The final piece of a long, carefully built deal. But the voice had cut through all of it, like a blade through silk. Standing in front of him was a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Her wide brown eyes filled with open concern. Her purple sneakers were scuffed. Her coat had a missing button. She held a stuffed rabbit in one hand, its ears worn and dangling. Lucien blinked. The airport around them moved like it always did. Too fast, too loud. Announcements echoed, luggage rolled, people rushed. But in this quiet space by the floor-to-ceiling window, where snow was starting to fall in thick, slow flakes, the world had stilled. The girl tilted her head, eyebrows furrowed. I've been waiting a long time. My mom said to stay here by the window while she went to the bathroom. But she's taking forever. I counted to 103 already. Lucien didn't answer right away. His thumb still hovered over the send button. His inner circle, men posted discreetly around the terminal, were surely watching this moment. His lieutenant, Callan, would be monitoring every second through dark lenses, scanning for threats. After all, in Lucien's world, even children could be used. He'd seen it before. But there was something raw in this girl's voice, unrehearsed, honest. She swung her backpack around and unzipped it, pulling out a granola bar with careful fingers. The foil was half open, half eaten. You hungry? She asked. Mommy says people who look at their phones too long forget to eat. Lucien blinked again. She held the granola bar out to him, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. She wasn't scared. She wasn't cautious. Just kind. He didn't take it. But he moved slightly on the bench, creating space beside him. She climbed up like they'd been friends for years, not strangers for 30 seconds. I'm Nia, she said through a mouthful of granola. That's Nia. Mommy says short names can still be strong. Lucien looked at his phone. 10 minutes remained. The buyers would walk if he didn't confirm. Months of maneuvering, contacts across 3 countries, gone. But he didn't move his thumb. Instead, he looked at this child sitting beside him, humming softly as she swung her legs. I'm Lucien, he said finally. His real name. No aliases, no fronts. She gave a small, serious nod. That's a strong name, too. Lucien studied her for a moment. Her coat was thrifted. Her jeans were patched. Her shoes had marker scribbles on them, probably her own. Still, her posture was confident. She wasn't lost. Not emotionally, anyway. My mom's a writer, Nia said. She says watching people helps her understand the world. But sometimes she watches too long and forgets the time. Lucien nodded slowly. She writes love stories. About people who are sad, but find someone who helps them be less alone. She says we all need at least one person who won't leave. Lucien exhaled slowly. Sophia's face flickered in his mind. His daughter. His only family. His deepest failure. She was probably eating dinner with her bodyguards right now, asking the nanny why Daddy missed bedtime again. You have a kid? Nia asked, looking up at him, reading something in his silence. I do, he said. A daughter, just about your age. What's her name? Does she like animals? Lucien let a small smile touch his lips. Her name's Sophia. She rides horses. Horses are just big dogs, Nia declared. I bet they give awesome hugs if you can reach high enough. She gave her one-eared rabbit a tight hug. This is Mr. Button. He's the best hugger. He lost his ear when we had to leave our apartment really fast. Lucien felt his spine straighten. That sentence was loaded. People don't move really fast unless something is chasing them, or unless they're escaping someone dangerous. Nia, casually pointed across the terminal. That man over there has the wrong walk. His bag is too light for the way his shoulders lean. Lucien's eyes shifted. She was right. A man in a tailored coat carried a briefcase, but his walk didn't match. Too heavy, stiff, concealing something. Lucien didn't hesitate. He tapped out a coded message to Callan. Target identified. Track and verify. He turned to Nia. Did your mom teach you to notice things like that? She nodded. She says writers have to notice everything, even the small lies in people's eyes. Lucien's phone buzzed. Callan's update was fast. Confirmed. 3 associates spotted. C7 and C12. Security breach probable. Recommend immediate extraction. The protocol was clear. Lucien needed to vanish. But doing so meant leaving this little girl behind. And Lucien, for reasons he didn't quite understand yet, couldn't do that. We're flying to San Francisco, Nia said casually. Mommy has a meeting, a real publisher. She's been working on her book for 2 years. Lucien couldn't believe what he was hearing. This girl was trusting him, completely unaware he was the kind of man who could erase a life with a single call. Do you think she's okay? He asked gently. I don't know, Nia said, looking at her hands. I hope so. Lucien looked at her again, then at his phone, then at the terminal around them. How long ago did your mom go to the bathroom? She pointed toward the plane outside. Before that big plane landed. Lucien's eyes darted to the arrival board. That flight had touched down 47 minutes ago. This wasn't just a case of getting turned around. Something had gone wrong. Lucien stood up. Let's go find her, he said, offering his hand. But Nia didn't move yet. You're not a normal mister, she said softly. You sit like soldiers do. You don't trust people. And your friends. She pointed without pointing. They act like my mom does when I'm playing at the park. They pretend not to watch, but they're ready. Lucien froze. This child had spotted his trained security. I solves problems, he said, crouching down to her level. And right now, we have one. Your mom has been gone too long. He held his hand out again. Nia looked at it. Then she reached out and took it, small fingers wrapping around his. Okay, Mr. Lucien, she said, but we have to find her fast. She doesn't like being alone. Not after the last time. She clutched Mr. Button tight, her rabbit a shield in one hand, her trust in the other. Lucien DeMarco, a man who had orchestrated assassinations, smuggled diamonds, and negotiated with killers, suddenly found himself walking through an airport, holding the hand of a little girl who believed in him without fear. And for the first time in years, he felt something foreign rise in his chest. Not control, not pride. Something closer to responsibility. Lucien walked briskly, weaving through the terminal crowd with Nia's tiny hand wrapped around his fingers. Her stuffed rabbit bounced from her grip with every step. She struggled to match his pace, but never let go. He slowed down instinctively, adjusting to her rhythm. Callan, never more than a shadow, was already moving parallel through the terminal. He'd clocked the 3 men Nia had somehow identified, likely a rival crew or undercover agents. The fact they were here at the same airport, at the same time Lucien had planned his Chicago transfer, was no coincidence. But they weren't the priority now. Nia was. Are we going to look in the bathrooms? She asked, glancing up. Because there's like 3. Mommy said always check all of them if I get lost. Lucien nodded, already scanning ahead. That's exactly what we're going to do. He'd memorized the layout of Terminal 4 on first glance. 3 restroom clusters, 2 cafes, 1 newsstand, 4 emergency exits. Every surveillance blind spot mapped. The skill came from years of having to escape with seconds to spare. But he'd never searched like this before. Not for someone else's child. They passed a Starbucks. Nia tugged on his hand. That's the one she likes. She always says the tea calms her down when she's nervous. Lucian considered asking the barista if they'd seen a woman matching Nia's mother's description. But he could already tell the line was too long and the staff too overwhelmed to be useful. Time was ticking. Do you solve problems for good people or bad people? Nia asked suddenly. Lucian was caught off guard by the question. It came out clear, loud, honest, like all her questions. P looked down at her. Sometimes both, he said. Depends who asks for help. Nia looked thoughtful. Mommy says good people help people who can't help themselves. Bad people help other bad people so they can be more bad together. He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They kept moving. Have you ever helped a kid? She added, skipping a little. Like me? No, he admitted. You're the first. She smiled proudly at that. They arrived at the first restroom cluster. Lucien paused near the wall, crouched down to Nia's level. I need you to stay here, he said carefully. Right here, by this bench. I'll be 2 minutes. If you move, Callan will find you. She nodded. Okay, but only 2 minutes. Lucien went inside. The stalls were all occupied except for one. He checked each, fast and efficient. No trace of a woman matching Nia's mother. On his way out, he passed an airport janitor, mopping near the exit. Lady passed out in a bathroom earlier, Lucien asked bluntly. The janitor blinked. No, sir, just an old man with food poisoning. Lucien returned. Nia was still sitting exactly where he'd left her, Mr. Button on her lap, legs swinging. No sign, he said. We'll try the next one. She slid off the bench and followed him. No hesitation in her steps. Lucien felt the familiar buzz on his phone. A secure text from Callan. No contact with Athena Morrison. Airline confirms check-in. No boarding yet. Bathroom sweeps continue. Blocked show. Athena, Nia's mother. Lucien didn't ask how Callan had gotten the name. That was his job. Know everything, fast. They approached the second restroom. Before Lucien could speak, Nia pointed toward a small snack kiosk. Mommy says if I ever get lost, find someone behind a counter. She says they're safer than strangers. Lucien gave her a long look. I'm a stranger. She shook her head. You're not just any stranger. You're the kind that watches people like she does. You saw the man with the wrong bag too. Lucien didn't respond. Instead, he motioned toward Callan, who was pretending to browse magazines nearby. Nia gave him a little wave. Callan didn't flinch, but nodded slightly, eyes already moving. Lucien checked the second bathroom. Same drill. No Athena Morrison. No woman in distress. He looked at his watch. Nearly an hour had passed since the girl had last seen her mother. When he came back out, Nia's face looked different. Tighter. Like something was dawning on her that she didn't want to admit. Is she gone? She asked, voice thin now. Lucien crouched down again. Not gone. But we haven't found her yet. Nia hugged Mr. Button close. The last time she disappeared, the police came. They said Daddy wasn't coming back. Mommy hid in the closet for hours. We moved after that. Lucien understood now. Athena wasn't just forgetful. She was running. And something, maybe someone, had caught up to her again. Nia whispered. She has diabetes. Sometimes her sugar gets low and she acts all confused, like she doesn't know where she is. That changed everything. Lucien's voice sharpened. Does she carry anything for that? Candy in her purse, and those little juice boxes. But she forgets to eat when she's nervous. I think she was nervous about the meeting. Lucien stood, already texting Callan. Possible medical emergency. Type 1 diabetes. Low blood sugar likely. Send medics to final restroom cluster. His next message was to airport security. Unofficial channels. No record. I think I should have stayed in the bathroom with her, Nia whispered, more to herself than him. But she told me to wait at the window. She promised she'd be quick. Lucien reached down and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You did exactly what she told you to. And now you're helping me bring her back. He spoke with certainty he didn't entirely feel. But Nia's face softened a little. A minute later, Callan's voice came in Lucien's earpiece. Female found. Restroom stall. Unresponsive, administering glucose gel. Breathing, vitals coming up. Lucien looked down at Nia. They found her, he said softly. Nia didn't say anything. She dropped Mr. Button, threw her arms around Lucien's waist, and started crying. Not loud, just quiet, shaking sobs that soaked into his coat. Lucien held her without thinking. Will she be okay? She whispered. She will, he promised. They're helping her right now. He didn't say what he was really thinking. That her mother had been minutes from a coma, maybe worse. That if Nia hadn't told him about the diabetes, or if he'd walked away like he was trained to, Athena Morrison might have died on a bathroom floor while her daughter watched airplanes. Lucien had seen death 1,000 times. He'd caused it more than he could count. But this time, he'd stopped it. The hallway outside the restroom had turned into a quiet emergency zone. Paramedics stood near the door, discreetly tending to Athena Morrison, who now sat on a stretcher, pale but conscious. Her head hung low, eyes still hazy. A medic held a juice box up to her lips, squeezing gently as she sipped. Lucien stood at a distance, with Nia still wrapped around his waist. She hadn't let go since they told her they'd found her mom. Her tiny hands clutched the back of his jacket, her cheek pressed against his ribs. Callan leaned in beside him, voice low. Vitals are stabilizing. They'll take her to the airport clinic for observation. No need to involve airport security. No paper trail. Lucien gave a slow nod. He didn't want any official involvement. Not for Athena, not for Nia. This wasn't the kind of attention they needed. Any sign someone followed her in? He asked. Not inside, Callan replied. But the 3 suspects are still in the building, watching. No direct move yet. Lucien's jaw tightened. This wasn't random. The timing was too perfect. Someone knew Athena would be alone, vulnerable. They were waiting for the wrong moment to become the right one. Eyes on them until I say otherwise. Callan melted back into the crowd like fog. Lucien gently knelt down, placing his hands on Nia's arms. Hey, he said quietly. She's going to be okay. Want to go see her? Nia hesitated, like she wasn't sure she could trust the reality of it. Then she nodded. Lucien led her forward, slow and steady. When they approached, Athena's eyes lifted, and the panic in them disappeared the moment she saw her daughter. Her hand reached out, trembling. Nia, she breathed. Mommy. Nia bolted forward, wrapping her arms around her mother, with a gasp that was half relief, half apology. I waited at the window just like you said, I did. But you didn't come back. I know, baby. I'm sorry. Athena wrapped her arms around her daughter, her voice shaking. I didn't feel good. I thought I just needed a minute. But her throat caught. I didn't know it was getting that bad. Lucien stayed a few steps back, watching. He knew this moment didn't belong to him, but Athena glanced up at him with watery eyes, and everything she couldn't say out loud passed silently between them. She knew this man, this stranger in a black coat with dangerous eyes, had been the one to keep her daughter safe. The paramedic looked at Lucien. She's stable now, but we're taking her to the clinic in the terminal just to be safe. 15 minutes of rest and sugar, She'll be back on her feet. Lucian nodded. He turned to leave. Wait, Athena said, her voice low and cracked. Please. Lucian paused, back still turned. I don't know who you are, she said, but thank you. He didn't respond. Nia pulled away from her mom, ran back to him, and slipped her small hand back into his. You can come with us, she said. You're part of the story now. Lucian looked down at her. I have to go. There are people I need to meet. She frowned. Are they the good kind of people? Or the kind that make things worse? That one hit deep. Too deep. Lucian crouched to her level. They don't matter right now. You do. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek, dark envelope. He handed it to Athena. She blinked. What's this? Cash. Enough for a safer place. And a number. If anyone asks questions, anyone, you call that number and say my name. That's it. Athena opened the envelope just enough to see the thick band of bills inside. Her fingers shook. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you? Lucian stopped her with a look. You're not the first person running from something. But your kid, she's not scared. That means you did something right. Athena's eyes welled again. They found us once already. I don't know how. I used a new name, new state. I thought we were safe this time. They're still in the terminal, Lucian said, voice hardening. I'll make sure they're not a problem again. She stared at him like he'd just spoken another language. Nia hugged his leg again. You're a helper, she said firmly. Even if you look scary. Lucian smiled, just a little. Only to the people who deserve it. He stood. Callan had reappeared behind him, silent as a ghost. They're packing up, Callan murmured. Like they know it's over. Lucian nodded. Let them leave, but tag them. I want names, locations, and leverage. I want their boss's wife's maiden name before sunrise. Callan grinned faintly. Understood. Lucian turned back to Athena and Nia. I'm not the kind of man you want to see again, he said. But if you ever need me, you will. He looked at Nia one last time. You're brave, kid. You too, she said, giving him a thumbs up. Even if you don't smile enough. He smirked as he walked away. At the far end of the terminal, his phone buzzed. Crypto deal expired. Transfer failed. Buyer has moved on. Lucian didn't even blink. For the first time in years, losing money didn't feel like losing power. He'd protected something real. And it was worth every damn dollar. Lucian DeMarco didn't leave the airport. Not yet. He watched from a high mezzanine level near the private lounges, standing behind tinted glass while his men worked below. From up here, the terminal looked like a board game, people moving like pieces, unaware of who controlled what. But Lucian had always known. He had built his empire from shadows, traded in secrets, bought silence with blood or money, whichever spoke louder. But that little girl's voice was still echoing in his head. You're a helper, even if you look scary. No one had ever called him a helper before. The deal was gone. 3 million in untraceable crypto vaporized the moment he missed the confirmation window. Under normal circumstances, that kind of loss would mean a violent response, maybe even a body in a hotel room somewhere before midnight. But right now, Lucian couldn't bring himself to care. He pulled out his phone and opened the private feed Callan had set up. The live video flickered briefly, then showed Athena and Nia being guided down a quiet corridor by medics. They were headed to the terminal clinic. Callan had already arranged for a friendly nurse on the inside, one of his people. Not everything needed to be done with guns. Lucian zoomed in on Athena's face, tired, haunted, but still strong. Then to Nia, who was still holding her mother's hand, but looking around, alert, watchful. That girl had instincts, natural ones. Lucian wondered what she'd grow into if she had safety, stability, not just survival. A quiet cough behind him. Callan, they're gone, he said simply. The three men from C7 and C12 took a back exit, got into separate cars. Lucien didn't look away from the screen. Tracked? Two of the cars, yes. One slipped us. Doesn't matter, Lucien replied. They'll make contact eventually. Find out who sent them. Callan hesitated, then asked, You want them brought in? Lucien was quiet for a moment. No, he said finally. Not yet. Let them think they scared her. When they get comfortable, then we move. He put his phone away and leaned against the glass, the coolness grounding him. Callan studied him for a moment, then said in a lower voice, You've lost bigger deals than this, boss. But you've never walked away from one. Never. Lucien's gaze flicked over. You ever have a kid, Callan? Callan shook his head. No, not that I know of. Lucien gave a humorless smile. When you hold your daughter for the first time, something happens. You start thinking like a man again, not a machine. That feeling disappears when you lose her. But tonight, he trailed off. Callan didn't press. Lucien turned away from the window and started walking. Tell the pilots I'll fly out tonight. Separate route. And get someone to check on the woman's background. Athena Morrison. See what she's running from. Callan nodded. If she's anything like you think, it won't take long to find a trail. They walked together through a quiet side corridor, away from the terminal noise. Lucien didn't say it out loud, but something about Athena's situation didn't sit right with him. She hadn't just run from a bad relationship or a landlord. She'd been hunted before. And if someone had tracked her here during one of Lucien's own operations, that meant this was no coincidence. Someone powerful was chasing her, and someone dangerous had nearly gotten a child killed today. Lucien's hands clenched briefly at his sides. Whoever it was, they'd made a mistake. Not just by targeting Athena, but by doing it on his turf. Suddenly, Lucien's phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. Thank you. I didn't get to say it properly. I think you saved more than just my life today. Athena. No emojis, no fluff, just words. Honest ones. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, without thinking, he typed back. You kept her safe this long. You'll keep going. But as they come again, don't run. Let me handle it. She didn't reply immediately. Lucien slipped the phone into his pocket and stepped into the elevator. By the time the doors closed, a new fire was already burning behind his eyes. He wasn't done. Whoever had sent those men would regret it. They'd stepped into Lucien DeMarco's world, and no one walked out of his world untouched. Lucien DeMarco didn't sleep that night. He never really slept, but tonight was different. Tonight, his mind wouldn't stop racing. Not with numbers or deals or threats, but with a little girl's voice in his head. You're a helper. A dangerous thing to be called in his world. And yet, he hadn't stopped thinking about it. He stood alone in the corner of a private air hangar outside the city. His jet was refueling. Callan was inside, finishing a secure call. The air smelled like fuel and rain. It was the kind of night that stuck to your clothes and made everything feel heavier than it should. In his hand was a report. Athena Morrison's file. His team had pulled every record, traced every address, and dug into the people she'd left behind. It read like a slow-burn tragedy. Once a freelance romance novelist, then a waitress, then a barista. Single mother. Changed states 3 times in 5 years. No known family. The most telling page was the restraining order, filed 2 years ago in Florida. No arrest followed, no follow-up. But the man she had filed it against, Harlan Sykes, had a name that set off quiet alarms in Lucien's memory. Harlan wasn't just some ex-boyfriend. He was a mid-level trafficker with ties to a rogue security firm that had been shut down after internal corruption. The kind of man who liked control more than company. The kind of man who believed women were property once they said, "I love you." Lucian's jaw flexed. So that was it. Athena hadn't just run. She'd escaped. And if the men at the airport were connected to Harlan, if they were tracking her across states, then this wasn't just about her. It was about revenge. Callan stepped out of the jet, holding a second file. "Found it," he said, handing it over. "Sykes has been bouncing around under shell corporations. Looks like he funneled money through a fake security contractor last year. Tracked some movement through a private surveillance agency that just opened up shop in Chicago." Lucian took the file, flipped through. Photos, GPS pings, bank accounts, and one photo in particular, grainy, zoomed in from a street camera, showed Harlan standing outside a schoolyard gate. Not just any school. Nia's school. Lucian's stomach turned into stone. "He's not just watching her," Lucian said coldly. "He's planning something." Callan nodded grimly. "He's got a pattern. Waits, watches, makes them feel safe, then strikes. We've seen it before in other cases. But no one's ever gone after him. He's protected." Lucian looked up, his eyes sharper than glass. "Then break his protection." Callan hesitated. "You want him brought in?" "No," Lucian said flatly. "I want him dismantled. Everything. His money, his people, his reputation. I want him to feel like hell has teeth." He paused, voice lowering. "But I don't want Athena to know. Not yet." Callan raised an eyebrow. "You trust her?" Lucian's answer was immediate. "I trust Nia." And that was the truth. There was something about the kid that couldn't be faked. She didn't just see through people, she saw them. Lucian had spent years hiding behind charm, threat, and wealth. But to her, he'd just been a sad man with shadows in his eyes. That had scared him more than any federal investigation ever could. Callan moved to get things rolling. Lucian stepped to the side and checked his phone. There was a message waiting. From Athena. "She asked about you tonight, Nia. She wanted to know if you were okay. She said she didn't want you to be lonely, comma." Lucian stared at the message for a long time. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Not yet. The next morning, Lucian walked into a small breakfast diner in Chicago alone. No entourage, no eyes in the parking lot. He sat at a booth near the window and waited. At exactly 7 a.m., a man walked in. Clean suit, slick hair, the kind of face that screamed entitlement. Harlan Sykes. He didn't recognize Lucian. Why would he? Harlan was used to being the hunter, not the prey. Lucian let him order coffee. Then, once the cup hit the table, he slid into the booth across from him like a ghost. Harlan froze, startled. "What the hell?" Lucian smiled politely, like he wasn't deciding between breaking the man's fingers or just removing his teeth. "You're a man who likes control," Lucian said. "I understand that. I deal with men like you all the time. Who are you?" Harlan said, confused but already reaching for his phone. Lucian's voice dropped. "Touch that phone and you won't have hands by breakfast." Harlan froze. "I know about the surveillance, the school, the airport. I know you sent men after Athena Morrison. You got no idea what that be." Lucian's eyes went dead. "Finish that sentence and I'll make you chew every word until you choke on it." Silence. "Here's what happens now," Lucian said. "You disappear. Not relocate. Not vanish for a week. I mean gone. I mean the kind of gone where no one remembers your face or cares where your grave is." Harlan smirked, trying to bluff. "You think I'm scared of some punk with a suit?" Lucian leaned in. "I've buried men 10 times your size for less. You sent killers to a public airport where a child could have died. I don't just kill men for that. I unmake them." Then he opened a small envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were photos of Harlan's offshore accounts, wiretap transcripts, and one particular photo of him, with a teenage girl. Not Athena, not Nia. Lucian's tone went ice cold. I know everything, Harlan. The man paled. Every bit of color drained from his face. You'll never see them again, Lucian said. You try, I'll make you beg for death. He stood, buttoned his coat, and gave a final glance. One more thing, he added. If anything happens to Athena, if Nia so much as scrapes her knee. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The promise in his silence was louder than any gunshot. Lucian left the diner without looking back. He didn't need to. He knew Harlan Sykes was finished. Not because he believed the man was smart enough to disappear, but because Lucian had already pulled every string to ensure it. Within the hour, Harlan's assets would freeze. His shell companies would be exposed. His offshore hideouts would be flagged. There would be no resources, no allies, no place left to crawl. The slow, surgical dismantling had already begun. Lucian didn't believe in quick deaths for men like Harlan. He believed in reminders. Harlan would wake up every morning wondering which moment would be his last, which footstep, which breath, which phone call would carry his end. That was Lucian's signature, lasting fear. But fear wasn't what kept Lucian awake that night. It was Nia's face. Her voice. Her small hand gripping his coat, like she trusted it more than the walls of the airport. Back at his estate, Lucian stood in his private study, surrounded by fine leather, dark wood, and silence. But the silence felt wrong now. Too clean, too dead. He stared at an old photo on his shelf, one of Sophia, his own daughter, taken before things broke apart. Her smile looked like light had been poured into her. It was the only photo of her he still kept out in the open. Callan walked in without knocking. He never knocked anymore. She landed safely, he said. Athena took a flight to the West Coast. Used the new identity we set up. New apartment waiting. School enrollment already being processed for Nia. Low profile. Secure building. We've got watchers nearby for the next month, maybe 2. Lucian nodded slowly, still staring at the photo. Callan hesitated. You going to reach out to them? Lucian didn't answer right away. I can't, he said eventually. Why not? Lucian turned, eyes darker than the sky outside. Because if I reach out, I stay in her life. And men like me don't belong in the lives of children. Callan didn't argue. He just looked at him thoughtful. Maybe she already decided that for herself. Lucian let the silence sit for a while before asking, How's Sophia? She's good, Callan said quietly. Still at the boarding school in Milan. Honor roll. Horse riding. Your guy sends weekly reports. Lucian clenched his jaw. Does she ask about me? Callan paused. No. Lucian gave a single nod. That hurt more than anything else. She hates me, Lucian murmured. Almost to himself. She doesn't know you, Callan said gently. That's different. Lucian walked over to the bar and poured a finger of whiskey. Not to drink, just to hold. The glass felt solid in his palm, something to grip while the rest of the world kept slipping. There are days I think I should call her, he said, just to hear her voice. Then do it. I can't, Lucian's voice dropped, because if I hear her voice, I won't let go. And I don't want her to become like me. He looked up. Or worse, I don't want her to get hurt because of me. Callan said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The two men stood in silence, one thinking of the child he lost, the other thinking of the child he just might have saved. The morning sun spilled through the windows of a modest second-floor apartment. The walls were still bare, boxes half unpacked, a new life still unwrapped. Athena stood in the kitchen, making tea with trembling hands. Not from fear, from exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones and only leaves when you start to believe you're safe again. Nia sat at the small table, drawing on printer paper with colored pencils. Mr. Button, freshly stitched with 2 new ears, sat beside her. Athena looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she finally spoke. "Do you miss him?" Nia didn't look up. "Lucien?" Athena nodded. Nia shrugged. "Not miss. Just, I think about him a lot. He looked like a storm, but a calm one, like the kind that scares the bad things away." Athena smiled faintly. "You always had a way of describing people too well." "He helped us," Nia said softly, still coloring. "Even though he didn't have to. That means something, right?" "It means everything," Athena whispered. She didn't ask any more questions. She didn't bring up the money, or the way things suddenly started falling into place after they left the airport. The fast paperwork, the apartment, the groceries already stocked. She knew. Athena sat beside her daughter and wrapped an arm around her. "Maybe one day," she said, "you'll get to say thank you again." Nia smiled. "I already did." Athena paused. "When?" Nia finally looked up. Her eyes were calm and knowing, too old for her age, period. "When I told him he didn't smile enough." Meanwhile, in a quiet study across the country, Lucien stood staring at a small envelope on his desk. Inside was a crayon drawing that had arrived without a return address. A tall man in a black coat, a little girl with big hair and a rabbit, and a woman smiling in the background. They were all holding hands. P. The words at the bottom were written in careful, uneven letters. "Helpers come in all shapes, even scary ones. Nia." Lucien didn't smile, but his hand shook just a little as he folded the drawing and placed it carefully inside his desk drawer. Then he turned off the light and let the silence wrap around him once more. Period. A week passed, quiet, too quiet. Lucien knew peace never lasted this long, not in his world. Peace was a warning disguised as a gift, a silence before something broke. And that silence had started to stretch into something unnatural. Callan confirmed Harlan Sykes was in hiding. All accounts drained, all assets burned. Word on the street was that he'd tried to seek help from his old connections in Miami, but the doors were closed. Lucien had made sure of that. But Lucien also knew something. Harlan had always been desperate. And desperation did not disappear. It festers. Then it explodes. It was 3:42 a.m. when Lucien's encrypted line buzzed. Only 2 people had access to that number. One was Callan. The other was someone who should have never had to use it. He answered instantly. Athena, her voice on the other end wasn't trembling, but it was tight, controlled. Sharp with panic, hidden beneath. "He found us." Lucien's blood turned cold. "We're safe for now," she added quickly. "But he left a note on our door. A photo of me. From 2 days ago. Grocery store. Alone." Lucien was already moving, pulling on his coat, signaling to Callan's room with one sharp knock. "He didn't make contact?" "No, just the photo. But he knows where we are." Lucien cursed under his breath. "Get out. Now." "We are," she said. "I have a go bag. And Nia's already up. We're heading to the emergency meet point you gave me." Lucien felt a rush of relief. She had remembered. She'd listened. "I'll meet you there myself," he said. "You're not alone in this." "I know," she whispered. Then, softly, "I wouldn't have made it this far if we were." The call ended. Lucien was already halfway out the door when Callan caught up. "What happened?" He made a move. Callan didn't ask who. He already knew. "Where to?" Lucien didn't hesitate. "The fallback spot near the border. Cabin in the woods. She's smart. She's not panicking, but she's scared." "She should be," Callan muttered. "We all should be." That man's not acting like he wants her back anymore. He wants revenge. Lucien's eyes narrowed. Then we end this. 6 hours later, a small cabin near the California border. The safe house was hidden deep among tall pines. No road signs, no neighbors. The kind of place that didn't exist on GPS. Lucien arrived just as the sun broke over the treetops. Nia ran to the door before Athena could stop her. When she saw Lucien, she launched into his arms without a word. He caught her easily. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded into his coat. "I'm not scared when you're here." Lucien felt that same strange pull in his chest. That thing that made him remember what it meant to protect, without expecting something in return. Athena followed behind, her face pale but composed. "We didn't sleep. I kept hearing sounds all night. I know it's nothing, but I couldn't shut my brain off." Lucien nodded. "That's how you survive." She looked at him, eyes full of exhaustion. "This isn't survival anymore, Lucien. This is war." He didn't argue. He agreed. They stayed at the cabin for hours. Lucien's team scanned the property, set up motion sensors, and created a perimeter. Nia played with Mr. Button on the porch, while the grown-ups planned like generals. Lucien had already made his choice. "This ends tonight," he told Callan. "No more warnings. No more chess moves. I want Harlan buried." "Understood." They had a location. A warehouse outside San Bernardino. One of Harlan's last few hideouts. A place his old contacts were too afraid to erase. Lucien's men would be waiting by dusk. But before Lucien could leave the cabin, Nia approached him on the porch. She was holding a picture in her hand, another crayon drawing. This time, it was of 3 figures, her mom, and Lucien. They were standing in front of a cabin. A big sun in the sky. A red X marked something in the corner. A monster, drawn in black. "That's the bad man," she said. "I wanted you to have this before you go." Lucien crouched beside her. "What's the X for?" "That's where you stop him," she whispered. "I know you will." Lucien didn't promise her he would. He didn't have to. She already believed in him more than anyone ever had. He stood and looked over the drawing once more before tucking it carefully into the inside pocket of his jacket, next to the folded one she'd mailed him. Then he gave her one final look. "Stay close to your mom," he said. "I always do." As Lucien walked toward the car, Athena came to the door. "Bring him back in pieces," she said. "Or don't bring him back at all." Lucien gave a single nod. He'd buried monsters before, but this one was personal. The warehouse was empty, too empty. Lucien knew the feel of an ambush. The air itself felt different, still, thick, like it was waiting to explode. He stepped through the entrance slowly, boots crunching over cracked concrete. The place reeked of rust, gasoline, and something fouler, like violence had lived here too long and soaked into the walls. Callan walked at his side, gun drawn low. 2 other men behind them, silent and ready. "Thermals?" Lucien asked. "Cold, no bodies on scan, but someone's been here." Lucien's eyes landed on a single folding chair in the center of the room. On it sat a file. He walked over, picked it up, and flipped it open. Inside were photos. Athena, Nia, the cabin. Someone had been watching them, even after the airport. Even after Harlan supposedly disappeared. Lucien's jaw tightened. Callan looked over his shoulder. "This isn't just Harlan anymore." Lucien nodded slowly. "He sold them." "Who?" Lucien shut the file and answered with a voice like gravel. "Whoever wants to hurt me." Because now it made sense. Harlan had made a final play. Not just out of revenge, but out of desperation. Someone had paid him to get close to Lucien's weakness, and in doing so, he had sold Athena and Nia's location to people who knew exactly who Lucien DeMarco was. Callan's phone buzzed. He checked it, then went pale. Boss, satellite just pinged a signal. The safe house perimeter was breached. Cameras are down. Lucien didn't wait. He was already running. Back at the cabin, Nia woke up first. She always did. She walked to the window, like she always did, to look at the sky, to check if the clouds had shapes, and to see if the trees whispered anything strange. But today, the forest was still. Too still. Then she saw it. A shape. A man, moving through the trees. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She did exactly what her mother taught her. She ran to Athena, shook her awake, and whispered, "He's here." Athena's eyes opened instantly. No hesitation. She grabbed her go-bag, took Nia's hand, and went for the back hatch door near the pantry, the one Lucien's men had shown her. But when she yanked it open, Harlan stood there, older, gaunter, his beard patchy, his eyes bloodshot. But worse, he was calm. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, voice low. Athena shoved Nia behind her. "How did you find us?" He grinned. "People talk when you pay enough. You ran so far, Athena. I'm actually impressed." "Lucien will kill you." He chuckled. "He'll try, but I didn't come for him. I came for you." And then, a shot rang out, not from Harlan's gun, from the trees. He jerked back, his shoulder exploding in blood. Callan, Lucien's men were already moving. Athena slammed the door shut and locked it just as Lucien's voice echoed through the woods. Block quote. "Harlan, you step out, or I drag you out in pieces." Another shot. Glass shattered. Smoke grenade through the side window. Chaos. Athena pulled Nia into the basement crawl space, just like Lucien had taught her on the first day. "Don't make a sound," she whispered. "Not even if you're scared." Nia didn't. Outside, Lucien moved like a ghost. He didn't fire until he saw the target. Harlan was limping, bleeding, trying to get around the side of the cabin. Lucien grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the outer wall. "You came into my world," Lucien growled. Harlan spat blood. "You can't protect them forever." "I don't have to." Lucien raised his pistol. "I just have to make sure you're not breathing." "Then do it," Harlan hissed. "Go ahead. Be the monster they already think you are." Lucien hesitated, only for a second. But in that second, Nia's drawing flashed in his mind. The monster X'd out. Lucien lowered the gun. "You don't get the satisfaction," he said coldly. Then he turned to Callan. "Take him. Deliver him to my contact in Prague. Let and break him, slowly." Callan smiled darkly. "With pleasure. We have overcome. Really over." Lucien sat on the back porch of the cabin, sipping coffee as the sun came up. For once there was no deal pending, no threat waiting, no one hunting him. Athena walked out and sat beside him, a blanket around her shoulders. "He's gone?" Lucien nodded. "He'll never come near you again." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why did you really help us?" Lucien didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Because I know what it's like to lose a daughter. And I know what it's like to need someone, just once, to show up when the world goes quiet." Athena's eyes softened. "You're not who I thought you were." Lucien gave a tired smile. "No one is." Inside the cabin, Nia drew quietly. This time, the picture was different. 3 people again, but this time, no monster in the corner. Just the sun. And a man in a black coat, smiling.